Howdy Internet, this is actually my vlog today. I don't generally do a whole lot of these on my own, but got a wild hair up my ass.
Wild hair up your ass.
So, and I just wanted to do something. I decided that Devi and I were going to have a conversation about movies we've been watching lately, and I'm using the term lately kind of loosely. I mean kind of more in the past year, since I moved out here. Because we've been watching a lot of movies.
Yeah, I like movies. I'm probably a bad influence on you in that regard, because I like watching a lot of movies. I like movies. I like cinema. I like TV.
Well, movies are great. I have no problem with this. So, let's see. In theaters, we just saw The Conversation.
Yes, old film with Gene Hackman and directed by Martin Scorsese.
Was that Martin Scorsese?
Yeah.
No, it was...
Wasn't
it Coppola?
Coppola, sorry, right.
Yeah. It was not Scorsese's style. But
Yeah.
definitely Coppola's. It was very, very slow.
And deliberate.
And, yeah, I mean, during the movie, I definitely had this feeling of not knowing how, I didn't know how I felt about it, but the ending really cinched everything together in a way where I was just like, yeah, that was worth it. I don't mind slow movies. I actually really enjoy them.
It has a lot of long shots, and it lets you really think about, it has these moments where, a person's just in a room, sitting there, and not really even doing much. But it gives a good break for you to reflect. I remember one point where he was in his apartment, and I sat there for a second thinking, what does the director want me to think about?
Well, yeah, I mean, I definitely, him being in his apartment definitely gave this idea of him being, being very closed off, of having, a very ordered life.
Because he was alone, and it was very organized, and there wasn't much in his apartment.
Yeah. So, and I'm a big fan of that deliberate kind of thing. I've actually found myself really enjoying a lot of older films as of late. Although, one of the first movies we watched when I moved out here, another movie we went to go see with Ken, was...
Our roommate Ken was the one who invited us to go see The Conversation.
Yeah, definitely worth it. What was that Travolta movie? It was it was inspired by...
I still forget. It
was inspired by a French film.
I could probably look it up without ruining this too much.
Yeah. But, yeah, that was awful.
Yeah.
So, older does not always necessarily equal good, but...
Well, but the thing is the cinematography was really decent, and...
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Just, I don't know, the characters and the overall plot was just...
I don't remember what I didn't like about it, honestly. I just remember it being, there was a cheesy car chase at the very end. I remember that being a thing, but...
The female lead...
Oh, right, she was kind of devoid of any
character.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
I don't know, it just never felt like the characters were really...
Was it Blowout?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I did like the villain. I'll give them that much. But what
Can you open the door real quick? Sorry, our cat wants in. Cats everywhere.
But I want to let you talk a little. What movies in the semi-recent past have you really particularly enjoyed, or what do you particularly want to talk about?
Well, something. Let's talk about Prometheus.
Oh, good God, again?
Well, it's such an example of a bad movie, and there's so many people who like it. I feel like I have to always bring it up. But
I feel like it's an example of the way a lot of modern film is right now. A lot of contemporary films are.
Yeah, definitely.
And where I don't like.
Yeah.
Like,
well, let's expand upon that, because the thing. Okay, so watching the conversation and then watching Prometheus. They're not even the same fucking like ballpark. But one of the things that I've been criticizing Prometheus about time and time again is that it never gave you a chance. It never gave the characters a chance to sit there and reflect on their actions, let alone the audience. And so I thought about that when we watched the conversation, because the conversation is just like 180 degrees the opposite direction.
You got nothing but time to think.
Yeah, but it was so nice, and it was the entire story of conversation was so simple. Like, if you really thought about it, I mean, pretty much the plot is, without spoilers, it's I don't know if he was a private investigator, maybe he was, but pretty much a guy who records conversations. I guess he was kind of a PI because he wasn't official.
Kind of.
Yeah, because the entire thing didn't have anything to do with the police.
He wasn't. I wouldn't say he was specifically a private investigator. He was kind of a guy for hire. I think he called himself, a security specialist.
Right. Anyways, he records people's conversations, and he was doing it in a very PI capacity in the movie. And it's pretty much the entire movie is. It circles around this conversation he recorded between these two people, and it kind of the mystery of why he was recording, why he had to do that job, why he was hired to do it, and then things involved in his past and how everything is resolved. And it's all built around that. Literally, it's called the conversation for that purpose. They actually use the conversation throughout the film as the background.
Right.
While they're going through the other scenes, so you really kind of get to know this conversation in tandem with the action that's going on throughout the film, and they do it in a very, I'd consider it artistic by today's standards, but I guess you can call it artistic, but it's interesting how they use this conversation time and time again to reflect things that was going on with other characters.
Well, yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Like, as the movie goes on and as he learns more and his perspective changes and he's dealing with his own things, and he's also obsessing over this conversation and constantly, further refining making it more clear.
He's trying to hear all the details of it because he wants to know what
Right.
he's been recording, what's the secret behind it, because the conversation in itself actually seems pretty innocuous, except for when he finally reveals, we'll just say spoilers, when he finally reveals that this one part he couldn't hear until partway through the film was this guy saying, if they ever find out, he'll kill us. And
No. The thing is that was in the tape. He just...
No, it wasn't till about a quarter of the way through that he finally heard that part clearly.
Well, yeah, okay.
But my point being is that it's part of the refining of it.
Right.
Him trying to... And actually, that plot element is what flipped everything on its head, because that's the point where he realized he might be a part of these people dying.
Right.
Which is all about, he had a thing in the past where he was a part of someone getting killed because of his PI investigations.
Right.
Yeah.
But the really interesting thing I liked about the film is the fact that you hear the same conversation over and over again, but you hear it differently.
Right. Like that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah. It's like your perspective of the conversation changes, so it takes on a radically different tone without actually changing.
Right, but it doesn't just... Well, actually, you know what? I think they did change the way they said some of the lines.
Maybe
later in the film, but it was done tastefully, because they wanted to... Yeah, it was at the very end of the movie where you realize when he says, they would kill us.
Mm-hmm.
And you realize the guy was saying that in a way to be a preemptive strike. And
right.
The entire time, I swear to God, you should go back and check this, but the entire time you heard him say that in the film, it sounded innocent. But then once you realized that it wasn't, they did another take where it was him saying it just a tiny bit more aggressively.
Maybe.
Yeah, but the thing is like, I think that's okay, because if you think about it, the perception of something, once you know something, sounds different. So how do you, show that in cinema? I mean, you could just let the audience hear the same thing and then make their own call. But if you dial it up just a notch, it adds that dramaticism, which makes movies movies.
Right, definitely. But I was thinking the other day, after having seen the conversation and reflecting on a lot of the films I've seen with Devi, and actually, I gotta say, the first movie that you and I watched together at the movie theater when I came here is got to be the one I've really enjoyed the most.
Which movie was that?
Drive.
Yes, Drive.
The thing is, I remember when we came out of the theater, you were like so torn. Like you were going from oh, I hate it. Oh, well, actually, no, it's great. Like you were going back and forth on it.
It's got some really tropey moments, and they're making a sequel, right?
I heard something about it.
It's called Driven.
Yeah, no, apparently apparently it was a book. I didn't realize it was a book.
Oh.
So it's actually, that Driven is actually the sequel book.
Right.
So.
Upon reflecting upon, I like it. My memory of it is it was a great film. But when I watched it at the time, there was just moments where I was just kind of like, it felt a little bit too much like they had these moments of, hey, I want to make a neat film, so let's have a neat moment. Because, for instance, when he was, I'll never forget the scene with him at the strip club, and that glorious frame where it's like him in the center, and then the almost angelic strippers all around him while did he kill a guy, or was he just beating him up?
He was going to kill him.
Yeah.
The thing I love about the scene, that's the thing that I love about the movie, and why I love it as, an homage to older film. It's kind of like a 70s movie, and it's also kind of a Western.
Yeah.
Everything is so deliberate.
But it's deliberate in its cinematography. But I feel like it's not deliberate necessarily in a lot of this. I think a lot of the story is just there to be interesting looking. But I don't feel like for instance, when he puts on the mask, to me that's the only thing about that is to make it look neat. But there's nothing that was built up to that point that makes sense as to why he would put on that mask.
I feel like he's just fucking crazy. That's the thing that I really liked about the character, is the fact that, you never really know what to make of him. I found myself wondering in the movie, just, wondering what this guy's story is. He doesn't seem healthy.
I remember another thing I didn't like about it.
What?
It was the fact that they made all kinds of references to the whole scorpion on the...
That did bother me.
And then he finally just said it out loud, and it was just you didn't have to say it out loud.
No,
you're just...
That bothered
they're
me.
They're catering to the lowest... Because there's just the whole fable, the allegory...
The whole thing was...
of the scorpion who rides on the back of a frog. And then, halfway across the river, the scorpion kills the frog, and the frog's like, why'd you do that? We're both gonna drown. And the scorpion's like, well, I can't change the way I... Can't change
your nature.
Right. And so, of course, he has this jacket that has a scorpion on the back, and you're like, okay, cool, scorpion on the back, and they slightly reference it, and you're like, yeah, that's what this is all about. And there's a point where he literally just straight up says it, and you're just like, no, you've ruined it because you didn't have to say it. And I'll be honest, the more I think about it, I feel like it was made to look like a movie like The Conversation. It was made in that sense of, let's have long, quiet takes, let's have thoughtful moments. But I don't feel like the character development they did with Gene Hackman, the entire movie of The Conversation was about him. And every single moment was about him and his paranoia and how he fucked up in the past and how it's ruined his life. And can you tell me how the movie about Drive is about the main character?
I think it's as much about the main character as a lot of those old classic westerns are. I feel like that's the kind of character that he is. He's this kind of dark character that you're not really sure whether he's he's the good guy, he's a protagonist, but you don't really know his story, and you never really know his story.
But that's the thing is okay, I'll grant you that, but I don't know, I think a lot of the way they shot those scenes made sense, and I don't know, I haven't watched a lot of westerns, so I agree with you. I feel like it definitely is kind of the lone guy who has a sordid past, who seems to be trying to get away from it, all of a sudden dragged back into it. It's got that all over it, and if that's what a lot of old westerns is about, then I get that, but it just I don't know, it was a fun ride. It was a fun experience. I would probably watch it again, honestly. I'd probably want to get high before I watch it the second time. But the slowness of it and a lot of the artistry I think was there just for it to look neat and to develop atmosphere, and not so much. Didn't have a lot of depth. It doesn't have as much depth as it feels like it has. You know what I'm saying?
I really, really disagree. I really do. And the thing is, I don't feel like it was fun. I feel like, in a lot of, like, I don't feel, like, we actually went into the movie not knowing at all what it was about. We hadn't planned to go see it. We actually only went to see it,
Were we gonna go see something else? And then...
Yeah, and then we missed it.
Yeah.
So we went in to go see Drive, having no idea what it was about. And that's the thing. I would not in the least describe the movie as fun. It's really, really slow.
I'm saying it's fun if you like that kind of movie. It's fun in the sense of it's really fun to watch. It's fun to kind of to drink in these moments, to drink in the movie. It's like, you know, it was beautifully shot, and watching it the first time, trying to suss out what's going on. You know, that's what the slowness did, which I liked, is it gave you time to think about, well, what is going on? What is this guy all about? What is happening here? But what I'm saying is I don't think there was any payoff. I felt like there was zero payoff of the thoughtfulness of what was going on, because at the end of the day, it seriously was just a guy who had a sordid past, who got, you know, dragged into a crime family situation, you know, mob situation, where he had to go take care of business, otherwise he was going to get killed. And, like, that's that straightforward. There's no, like, there's nothing, like, once again, like, and I know you said you disagree with this, but there's no depth to it. There's
no depth. There is no depth in the plot. I mean, the plot is simple. It's basic.
But that's what I'm saying, but it adds no depth to the character. Like, for instance, Gene Hackman's character has a lot of fucking depth in the conversation. But, like, you and I can sit here and pick apart how that character was flawed, how he had a fucked up past, how it's affecting him now, and how it's, you know, involved his paranoia, and how he can trust people, yet at the same time he still wanted to do his job, and, you know, by the end of it, he didn't even get out of it. Well, that's kind of the interesting thing about the end of the conversation, because I was actually arguing that for the first time by the end of the movie, he had something to be paranoid about. He faced his worst fear, it happened, and he had people who were looking after him, who were spying on him, and he couldn't do anything about it. And so my argument was, well, that somehow freed him from everything, because it ends with him tearing up his apartment, and then he's sitting there just playing the saxophone, and it's almost like he has nothing left because he's faced the worst possible thing that can happen, and he's still alive, and he just goes back to playing a saxophone. You know, you learn so much about the character, and then you have this kind of, like, nice, thoughtful ending. In Drive, you just have a guy who had a sordid past.
The thing is, I disagree. I felt like it was a good ending.
I didn't
really
say it's a bad ending. I'm just making the point that there's no depth to the character. You can't tell me the nuances of that character. There's the only nuances, and the only thing, that character is a trope. The entire movie is based around a trope, and it's, once again, the cinematography is great.
Well, what trope?
Once again, the character who had a sordid past, who's trying to stay away from it, who gets dragged back into a situation where, you know, he uses his, you know, his awesome badass skills to prove that he's the badass, and by the end of it, he is the badass with the sordid past.
Well, I don't feel like that's what that was. I don't feel like that's what that was at all.
So then tell me what it was.
I feel like, well, for one, I mean, yeah, I mean, there is the whole fact of, you know, him being kind of, you know, this dark, mysterious character. I will definitely give you that, but I feel like, okay, I will not deny that it's a trope, and I will not deny that the story is incredibly simple. I, however, think that the execution of it brings a lot of interest into it. I mean,
what's interesting about it, because, like, he did the thing that crazy people do with the sort of past do when they're brought into a situation that they need to get out of. He went through that. You know what I'm saying? But there's nothing. The only thing new is the style of character that is. I've never seen.
Well,
a character.
Why does that have to be something new? Like.
Well, because we've seen movies like this. I mean, because it's because it's boring if it wasn't new, and it is new. I'm saying it is new. I'm saying that's the good thing about it, is because he's a unique take on that trope. But at the end of the day, it's still just a trope with not a lot of depth.
I think it's not so much.
It's like a really slow action film. You know, it's still just an action film.
He's a guy. I feel like he's a guy who's, you know, trying to atone. He goes out of his way to atone, but the fact is,
atone?
Yeah. I feel like he's trying to do the right thing when he hasn't really ever done the right thing. That's what
where do you get that from the movie?
Because the thing is, he's going out of his way to try to help someone for no reason. He's trying to, help the husband of this girl that he has this weird kind of infatuation with. And I feel like it's him, like, trying to atone for something. And I don't think you really need to know what he's trying to atone for. I mean, you said so yourself. It's all about him trying to change who he is, but eventually having to come to terms with the fact that
his nature,
that he's never going to be able to change, and
I
never
said it was about how he wants to change who he is. I said he's trying to get away from. He's just trying to get away from.
I don't think it's necessarily about getting away from it. I think
it's pretty clearly about him trying to get away from it, because the whole thing about him working at the garage and just being. It doesn't work. He's like the Punisher light.
No, the thing is, he wasn't about getting away with it, because he was still doing crime. He was still the driver.
But I'm not talking about fucking crime, dude. I'm just talking about having to be that super badass whatever guy. Who, you know what I mean? He does the thing because, he doesn't get involved. The entire movie's about him not getting involved. And then you're right, he meets the girl and he feels like he needs to help protect her for whatever reason, so he gets involved. And then by the end of it, he kills everyone, and he's like, I didn't want to get involved. You know what I mean? It has that whole vibe of, I didn't want to have to do this, but if I'm going to do it. And then he does it. And then that's the movie.
Well, I think that's a bit of an oversimplification.
Well, tell me why.
Well, it's just like you're just breaking it down to, oh, well, there's something badass he needs to do, and he does it. But, like...
Well, it's true, though, because here's the thing, because you can't... If you break down the conversation to its most basic elements, the basic elements of the conversation is the fact it's a story about this guy dealing with paranoia and the guilt of something that he... Not only dealing with guilt of what he did that affected some people in the past and they died, but he's also dealing with paranoia that just goes along with, I don't know, maybe the anxiety of that or something. But so you can break it down to the simple elements, and it doesn't make the movie worse for it. It's just, that's what the movie was about. It's kind of all centered around that. I mean, most good movies are built around a core element or elements, and they expand upon those things. And that's what I'm saying, is that where the conversation was all about this key element of Gene Hackman's character and his guilt and his paranoia, Drive is built not around, like, the development. It doesn't feel like the things that it's built around are more like, it's more story driven as opposed to character driven. I don't feel like the character of Ryan Gosling, right?
Right.
I don't feel like Ryan Gosling's character...
He's called the Kid, by the way. In Western fashion, he's never really given a name.
Right. So, I mean, you could argue that the character-driven part of it is the fact that he can't change his nature.
Right.
But that's not interesting. That's just a trope.
I find that really interesting.
All right.
And I don't feel like that's something that's really done very much in film nowadays.
But that's the most basic idea of any kind of character arc, is changing your nature. That is the very foundation of a typical character arc. As a matter of fact, that's the whole thing with Gene Hackman's character in the conversation, is his character also never changed, but there was more going on than just the fact that he didn't change. It was, the things that they were exploring...
Well, didn't he change?
It's I don't know. He didn't, because he still went through... He ended up caving in and giving the people the files. I think he was trying to, at the very end, do something different by warning the people or something, because he went to the hotel room and there's this whole thing about him trying to stop the people from being killed, even though they're actually end up being the killers, which is a cool twist.
Right.
I
think this has gone over my limit.
Oh, you'll probably be able to upload it.
Okay.
If not, we'll upload it to mine.
Okay.
But anyways, but my point being is that there's a lot of layers, there's depth, there's complexity to the trope of, the character arc of and he didn't change, and whatever. But I'm just saying, with Ryan Gosling, like, we've talked about this, and you haven't told me about his character other than the fact that he was a guy who seemed kind of he was a seemingly interesting guy with a sordid past who, you know what I'm saying? You're not talking about the character, you're talking about the story. There's not a lot of character happening. It's just he's
Well,
a placeholder for this trope and this story, not really.
I haven't really talked much about this story. I mean, I'm talking about the character. And I think the whole interesting part about the character is not the fact that he's a walking trope, but that, and I know you're gonna laugh at this, but that he's a hollow guy. He really is just kind of empty. And he's trying to fill himself with something, but then he realizes, oh, well, I can't do that. That's not something I can succeed at doing.
I'll grant you that that would be interesting if that's what the story was about, but I feel like it's more of a side effect of the fact that he just doesn't have a character. I don't think... Because the thing is, like, I grant you, like, the whole thing about him wearing a mask, like, you could say that that goes back to the fact that he's not really a person to begin with, so... But it wasn't like he put on the mask and then became a person. He was a guy with a mask, you know? It wasn't like... There's never... Yeah, there's never anything in the story where it talks about him wishing he could be more than he was, being more of a person, or you know what I'm saying? There's nothing in the story that develops that theme.
I feel like I feel like his actions demonstrate that, and especially his interactions with the woman. I mean, like when they're about to get onto the elevator, the conversation that they have. I feel like that really demonstrates it right there. It's the fact that the entire reason he stepped into the situation in the first place is wanting to change. Wanting to be a real person. To be a real human being, like the song, that keeps fucking playing in that movie. Didn't like the song. I'll put that out there. But, I mean, I feel like that's what...
Well, I'll grant you that.
Like, I feel like that's something that was done really well, that elevator scene. The fact that immediately following that conversation of him expressing those feelings, but then immediately having to turn around and beat someone to death in a really gratuitous and horrible and awful way, and clearly feeling nothing about it. Just doing it.
That's the thing is, I don't feel like he ever seems conflicted over who he is.
I definitely feel like he does.
How?
Well, because... Well, that's the thing. I mean, like, when he does those things, it comes very naturally to him. And that's something that you see in the character. But
that's what I'm saying, is you never... Like, I mean, I even said this at the very beginning, that it's all about the guy who wants to try to get away from his past, but he can't get away from it. But in truth, I mean, I guess that's kind of what bothers me about the film, is I don't feel like he ever does any kind of action other than the fact that he... Yeah, I don't really get a sense of him trying to avoid being who he is. I think if anything, he's okay with it to the very last.
No, I really don't think so. I think, like, when he talks to the girl, when he gets involved in the first place, he's doing it because, he wants them to be left alone and he doesn't want... And then there's, like, sorry, I don't really know how to...
I really feel like he's Punisher-like. I feel like he doesn't...
So.
I don't feel like there was much in the movie that actually showed that he cared about... Now that I think about it, cared about getting away from it. Because, I mean, he just knows what to do. He knew what was necessary. And he does have a sense of morality in terms of, like...
Do you remember the
bad guys needing to be taken care of. And he just gets... Like, I can imagine that... If this ever happened again, he would go as far as it took to take care of it, because he definitely has a sense of right and wrong. But I don't think he has a sense of being a killer being a bad thing.
I don't think... Do you remember the conversation they had prior to getting into the elevator? Do you remember
I don't remember a lot of the film, honestly.
Well, I think, he talks about wanting to protect the girl, and he talks about wanting to leave. He talks about wanting to leave with her. And to take care of her.
Right?
Yeah, and I feel like that's the conflict that he's having. He wants to have that...
There's no conflict. He does what's necessary.
No. He doesn't... I don't think that he wants to, like... I think that he just wants to leave. I think that he just wants to leave with her. But I think, like, the whole conflict is...
But he knows that he has to kill them, otherwise they're going to kill them. They're going to pursue him and kill them.
That's something that he realizes. That's something that he realizes and comes to terms with afterwards. He realizes that he can't do these things.
This isn't. These aren't. There's no. depth to that. It's like a logical course of action, and there's no mystery to it. It's just like, well, they need to survive, so they're going to do what it takes to survive. It's like, yes, that's what this movie, that's what happens in these movies. You know what I'm saying?
But I don't feel like it's about his survival at any point. I mean, the reason that he does what he does in the end is not for his own survival; it's for her survival.
Well, still, but this doesn't. There was no point at the beginning where he like didn't care about people, and then all of a sudden he met some magical woman who made him care about people. I think he would have done that regardless. I'm sure he's done that in the past. I'm sure he's protected people. I mean, his fucking job driving is kind of protecting people. There's no once again there's no alteration of his character, and once again that goes back.
I think we need to watch the movie again.
I don't want to. Because it was fun the first time, and the cinematography is good, but you're not watching it again. It's, if anything, you know what it's going to do? It's going to give me more evidence to continue to increase this argument, because I can't remember everything, but I do know that what I'm saying is right. And here's the thing, though, you're getting defensive about what I'm saying, but it doesn't take away from the fact that you like it for those things. I'm just saying I don't. So you know what I'm saying?
Right. I'm just saying
in the same way that in this, you don't. There's no disagreement. We're totally agreeing on what's going on. It just, you enjoy that kind of storytelling, and I don't. I mean, like the reasons that I hate Prometheus are a lot of the reasons that people love Prometheus, and it doesn't make either one of us wrong. It just makes the fact that, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. No, I get you. Okay, well, I think we've done this conversation to death. I like Prometheus. I hate it! I know. You know what? I'm just gonna go die. I hate Prometheus. I like Drive.
I like Drive too. I just don't like it the same way you do. I like it for.
Well, what do you like about it?
I like the cinematography. I like his character for what he is, but what I'm trying to say is I don't think there's any kind of depth to it, and I think it's good for what it is. I don't think there's much beyond the surface of it, but that's okay, and it's good for what it is. But because of the lack of depth, the lack of actual like nuance in the characters and stuff, it makes those slow scenes, they'd be excruciatingly boring watching it the second time because you don't get to learn anything. And that's the kind of point I'm making, is that in the conversation, I would be interested to see the conversation again someday in the future, not anytime soon, but because you're like, you know what's going to happen, you know where this guy's coming from, and it's just like, you're sitting there thinking, why is he acting like this right now? Like, oh, and then when you watch it again the second time, it'll make a lot more sense. And that's what I'm saying with Drive, is that you're watching it the second time, and there's no mystery that's going to be revealed. There's no anything. It's just this guy who is clearly who he is. So when you watch it the first time, all those slow scenes seem very interesting because you're intrigued why these things are happening, because you feel like there might be more to it, and i.e. thus depth. But when you go back and watch it again, you're just going to see that it's the guy just being himself. And
well, I mean, like, do you remember the first scene with any actual violence in it? Like, do you remember the motel scene?
Refresh my memory.
The motel scene is when they get ambushed, and, like, the one girl gets blown away, and he proceeds to brutally murder the both of them.
Wait, when they're driving away from the motel?
No.
Else.
They were driving away from a pawn shop or something, and they end up hiding out at a motel. Okay.
And then what happens?
Well, what happens is that the girl reveals that something's going on. I feel like I don't know. I mean, during that scene, I was personally very shocked. I feel like there were things revealed about the character. I mean, when it came time for violence to happen.
I think that was the big reveal, is that, oh, this guy used to be a killer, and he obviously has a lot of experience in it, and he has no problem with it. And that is the reveal. But once again, that's the reveal. It's not it's not because of such and such, and now he has to deal with the conflict of that. You can argue once again that the conflict is the fact that he doesn't want to be a killer, but he knows how to do it. But once again, that's not interesting to me because I know that story. I've heard that story before.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's not interesting. It's a good film, shot well. It's got like that one scene. I mean, the violence is good. It's all done very prettily and beautifully. But I know that story. The Gene Hackman story. I keep saying Gene Hackman story. The Conversation it's a unique story. It's like something you've never seen before. Like you've never seen a story. I mean, I guess you could break that down to even its tropiness of a guy haunted by something that happens in his past, and then he tries to avoid it, but it happens again.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't stop there. You know, you can't just the trope of The Conversation doesn't stop there because the nuance in it is what makes it so unique.
Mm-hmm.
It goes a little further than the trope. You know what I mean? By having the entire story built around it and the way they present it, you know, by having the conversation go over and over again throughout the entire film and by revealing just enough about his character and then concentrating on those little reveals so that by the end of it, when he sees the blood in the toilet and stuff, you're feeling like all the anxiety that he's feeling, you know?
Right.
And then you're not sure what's real and what's not. I mean, there's a lot of shit going on there, complexity within the trope. And I don't feel the same way about Drive.
I take your point. Alright, we've run well over. There's no way this is going to be able to be uploaded to my YouTube channel.
You'd be surprised.
And, so yeah.
Can't wait to watch another film with you, baby. Bye.
Bye.
You still love me, right?
Maybe.